I was halfway through resealing the dock when I heard the shrill voice of Olivia Vandercrest echoing across the lake like a mosquito in a megaphone. "Excuse me, hello. You can't be doing that without paying the lake usage fee." I looked up, sweat dripping from my brow, and there she was, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on top of her helmet of blonde curls, and a clipboard clutched like a weapon. Olivia was head of the Pinebrook Shores HOA, self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, and a woman who believed that every square inch of the community belonged to her if she squinted hard enough. I stood up slowly, the boards creaking beneath my boots. "Olivia, this is my lake," she blinked. "That's not how it works, Jason. You live in the community, the lake is part of the community. That means you owe a usage fee, $250 due by Friday, or there will be consequences." I wiped my hands on a rag and stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "I bought this property 6 years ago. The lake is on my deed, I own it, every inch. You can't charge me to use my own lake." She waved the clipboard at me like it was the U.S. Constitution. "The HOA bylaws say, I don't care what the bylaws say," I cut in. "They don't override county property records." Her face flushed red. "You'll be hearing from the board." I turned back to the dock, figuring that was the end of it. I underestimated just how far Olivia would go. 2 days later, I was grilling burgers on the back porch when I saw flashing lights reflecting off the water. Sheriff's SUV. Then another. I stepped out onto the lawn, apron still on, just in time to see Olivia standing beside a deputy, pointing at me like I'd robbed a bank. "There," she shouted. "That's him. He's trespassing on HOA-controlled water and refused to pay the mandatory usage fee." The deputy looked confused. "Ma'am, he's literally standing on his property," she huffed. "The HOA owns the lake." I stepped forward, flipping open the folder I had ready just in case she pulled something like this. I handed the deputy a copy of my land deed, clearly showing the lake boundaries drawn within my lot. "My name's Jason Whitmore. This is parcel 17B, the lake's mine. Has been for 6 years. The deputy took a long look at the documents, then turned to Olivia. "Ma'am, you called in a trespassing complaint on a man using his own property." Olivia's jaw twitched. "But the HOA doesn't override property law," he said flatly. Then he turned to me. "Sorry to bother you, sir." As the cruisers pulled out, Olivia glared at me like I'd just kicked her designer poodle. She stormed off without another word. I thought that would be the last of her nonsense, but I should have known better. She wasn't done, not even close. By Monday morning, I noticed something strange. A fresh chain-link gate had been installed halfway down the gravel path that leads to the lake from my property. A shiny new HOA access-only placard was zip-tied to it, flapping in the breeze like a challenge. I walked down with a cup of coffee in hand and found the whole thing anchored in fresh concrete, bolted into the ground. They had welded the latch shut. I stared at it for a long while, steam from the mug curling around my face, then walked back to the house and made a phone call. "Morning, Carla," I said when she picked up. "You still with county zoning?" Carla laughed. "For my sins, yes. What's up? I've got a gate installed by someone who doesn't own the land, blocking my access to my own lake." "You serious? Dead? Send me pictures." "I'll pull the parcel overlays and check permits." I hung up and snapped about a dozen photos from every angle, including a few of the concrete still curing. The moment I sent them, I walked back with my crowbar, but before I could get to work, I heard rapid footsteps crunching over gravel behind me. "Step away from the gate," Olivia's voice rang out, theatrical and overly loud, like she was performing for an invisible audience. I turned slowly. She was wearing a Pinebrook Shores windbreaker, holding a phone high in one hand with the camera pointed squarely at me. "Do not damage HOA property," she warned. "You're being recorded." "This is my land," I said calmly. "You're trespassing, and this gate is going down. You'll be arrested for destruction of community improvements." "This was approved by the board. You installed a fence on private property without permission. That's illegal." Olivia took a step closer. "You've been warned." Any action you take now will be reported. I walked right up to the gate, lifted the crowbar, and with one sharp swing, cracked the latch clean off. The camera in her hand trembled. Unbelievable, she hissed. You wait, the board will deal with you. I didn't answer. I pried the concrete footings loose, yanked the gate out, and dragged it up the hill. She followed the whole way, ranting and muttering under her breath. The next day, I got a certified letter taped to my front door, not even mailed properly. It claimed that I now owed damages and restoration fees totaling over $3,000. It included a breakdown. Gate replacement $850. HOA labor $1,200. Emergency security assessment $950. I took the letter into my office, scanned it, and emailed it directly to Carla, who had already pulled the zoning reports. She called me back within the hour. They didn't file a single permit, she said, and they're claiming it's a community security feature. That doesn't fly. Want me to flag this with the county attorney? Please do. 2 days later, I got a visit from a man in a brown blazer and a clipboard who introduced himself as Tom from the County Land Use Division. He was polite, professional, and very interested in where exactly this mystery gate had been installed. I walked him down to the spot, pointed out the ripped-up concrete edges, and showed him the photos I'd taken. He whistled low. They're not even close to the easement line. This is clearly within your boundaries. You said you got a bill for this, $3,000. Hand-delivered. Tom shook his head. That's textbook encroachment. I'll file the violation and forward it to the district attorney. If they try this again, it's criminal trespass. I thanked him and walked him back to his car. He paused before getting in. Word of advice: if they keep pushing, document everything. Video, audio, timestamps. We've had a few HOA cases lately that got ugly. Yours is already heading that direction. I didn't have to wait long. That Friday, I came home from a shift at the station. I'm a fire captain in town, and found a bright orange sticker plastered across my garage door. Notice of non-compliance, HOA investigation pending. Next to it was yet another copy of the lake usage fee invoice, now marked delinquent. I peeled the sticker off and tossed the paper in the trash. But by now, this wasn't just annoying, it was a pattern. They'd escalated from empty threats to false reports, illegal installation, and now public defacement. I called my attorney. Her name's Lillian, and she's the kind of lawyer who doesn't blink when you tell her your neighborhood board is impersonating law enforcement. Send me everything, she said. Every document, every photo, every minute of security footage. I'll draft a cease and desist by tonight. She did more than that. By Monday morning, she'd filed an injunction with the county court. The hearing got scheduled for the following Thursday. In the meantime, she sent a copy of the filing to the HOA's registered address, which, hilariously, was Olivia's own mailbox. 3 days later, as I was walking my dog around the block, Olivia flagged me down. She was holding a manila folder and trying to look composed, but her voice had that strained edge people get when they're trying not to scream. "This is getting out of hand," she said, offering the folder like it was a peace offering. "We can settle this privately. I've drafted a waiver. If you sign it, the board will drop all pending charges and allow you limited lake access." I stared at her. "What part of I own the lake have you not understood?" She tightened her grip on the folder. "We're trying to preserve harmony. You're making things difficult for everyone. You're going to be served this week," I told her. "That waiver, you can show it to the judge, right after we explain how you tried to extort your neighbor." She flinched. Finally, she dropped the folder and walked away without another word. The hearing was short. The judge reviewed the documents, looked over the parcel maps, and asked Olivia, who came representing the HOA, why she thought she had jurisdiction over a lake that was deeded to a private owner. She stammered something about shared community resources and historical use, but the judge cut her off. "Do you have any legal documentation showing easement rights over the lake?" "No, Your Honor. But then I'm issuing a permanent restraining order preventing the HOA from interfering with Mr. Whitmore's access," or use of the lake. Any further attempts to impose fines, fees, or barriers will be considered harassment. Olivia turned beet red. I didn't look at her once. Outside the courtroom, Lillian handed me a printed copy of the ruling. You're in the clear, but I'd keep your cameras rolling. Something tells me she's not done. She was right. Because 2 weeks later, Olivia filed a complaint with the IRS. She claimed I was operating a commercial marina without a license and collecting revenue from unauthorized lake usage. I only found out when I got a letter from the IRS asking for clarification on business activity conducted under Parcel 17B. That was the final straw. I filed charges. With the help of a real estate attorney and Lillian, we compiled every document from the last 2 months. The fake invoices, the illegal gate, the false police report, the sticker stunt, and now the fraudulent IRS claim. It was enough to build a case for criminal harassment and attempted fraud. The county prosecutor took one look and agreed to open an investigation. The sheriff's office subpoenaed HOA board communications. What they found was worse than we expected. Emails between Olivia and 2 other board members detailed a plan to force access to the lake by building a paper trail of violations, with the goal of petitioning the county to grant the HOA control of it, due to excessive non-compliance by owner. They were inventing a history of fines to fabricate justification for seizing land they didn't own. When the sheriff's investigators showed up at her door with a warrant, Olivia reportedly tried to claim she was just following board procedures. But it didn't help that they found a printed stack of fake invoices labeled "Template Adjust Amounts" as needed in her home office. She was arrested on charges of attempted fraud, filing a false report, and conspiracy to commit property theft. The community was stunned. Suddenly, neighbors who'd whispered about her behind closed doors were showing up at my door, apologizing. Some had been harassed for years but never spoke out. I helped organize a recall vote of the entire board. With Lillian's help, we rewrote the HOA bylaws to limit board power and require third-party audits of all financial decisions. My lake remained mine, and Olivia. Well, she's banned from serving on any HOA board in the state. Turns out, some paper trails lead straight to jail. 3 weeks after Olivia's arrest, Pinebrook Shores was quieter than it had been in years. The usual stream of passive-aggressive flyers vanished. The monthly compliance sweeps that used to involve board members walking around with clipboards and tape measures had stopped entirely. But I wasn't relaxing. Not yet. Lillian warned me the board might try to distance themselves from Olivia by claiming she had acted alone. And sure enough, within days of her arrest, the 2 remaining board members released a statement on the neighborhood app blaming her for unilateral misjudgments and an unfortunate lapse in oversight. I wasn't buying it, and neither was the county prosecutor. By then, the sheriff's investigation had uncovered more than backdoor scheming. They'd found a paper trail stretching back over a year. Fake fines issued to homeowners who tried to report violations. HOA funds rerouted to consulting fees that landed in personal accounts. And most damning, a falsified insurance claim for storm damage that never happened. That crossed into felony territory. The county convened a grand jury to review the findings. I wasn't involved in that part directly, but I did get a call from Deputy Maynard, the same officer who'd responded to Olivia's bogus trespassing report weeks earlier. "Mr. Whitmore, just a heads up," he said. "You're likely to be called as a witness during the proceedings. Your case was the tipping point." "I figured," I said. "If you need anything else, I've got a full catalog of everything, dates, footage, printouts," he chuckled. "You're more organized than half our staff. Appreciate it." Meanwhile, the neighborhood was starting to shift. People who used to avoid eye contact were stopping me during dog walks. A retired Navy machinist named Don told me he'd been fined over $200 last year for improperly coiled garden hoses. A single mother at the cul-de-sac said her driveway had been targeted for excessive chalk drawings. They all thought they were the only ones. So I started organizing. We met in my backyard, just a few neighbors at first, then a dozen, then nearly 40. I set up folding chairs and passed around copies of the HOA charter and state statutes. Lillian helped me prepare a summary of what powers the board legally had and, more importantly, what they didn't. Barbara, a retired public defender, raised her hand. How hard would it be to dissolve the HOA entirely? Not just recall the board, scrap the whole thing? That question hung in the air for a long second. Then I said, I've already looked into that. It takes a 2/3 majority vote of all property owners. And we'd have to file a petition with the county to decertify the HOA as a governing entity. Doable? She asked. I nodded. If we stay organized. That night, I drafted a petition and set up a secure website for digital voting with verification protocols to prevent tampering. We distributed QR codes and hard copies. By the end of the week, we had signatures from nearly 60% of the neighborhood. That's when the anonymous flyers started showing up. They were professionally printed, slipped under doors and tucked into mailboxes. No contact info, no name. Just ominous language. Chaos is not community. Your home value is at stake. Don't let outsiders destroy what we built. It was laughable. But then someone slashed Don's tires. The sheriff's office opened a separate investigation, and I installed 2 more security cameras, one facing the street, another pointed at the path behind my house. A week later, my motion alerts pinged at 3:12 a.m. I reviewed the footage and saw a figure in dark clothing crouching near my mailbox, stuffing something inside. I called it in immediately. Deputy Maynard arrived less than 20 minutes later. We reviewed the footage together, and he collected the envelope from the box while wearing gloves. Inside was a typed letter filled with threats that were vague but menacing. Phrases like "know your place" and "you're not one of us" stood out in bold. Maynard looked up from the letter. This isn't just harassment anymore. It's intimidation. You want to press charges if we find out who it is? You're damn right I do, I said. 2 days later, they had a match. The sheriff's office compared the footage to recent DMV photos and confirmed the person in the video was Todd Brinkley, one of the remaining board members. He was arrested at work for criminal harassment, vandalism, and intimidation with intent to interfere in a legal process. When news broke, it spread like wildfire. Local media picked it up. The headline ran, HOA board member arrested in ongoing harassment case linked to property dispute. That left one board member still standing, Sharon Leeds. She released a panicky statement on the neighborhood site claiming she had no knowledge of any illegal actions and was cooperating fully with authorities. But the grand jury subpoenaed her phone records soon after. Turns out she'd been part of an encrypted group chat with Olivia and Todd discussing how to handle me. One message read, "If we can get him cited enough, we can petition for nuisance abatement. The lake won't matter." That sealed it. The grand jury returned indictments against all 3. Olivia faced the most charges: fraud, falsification of public records, conspiracy. Todd was charged with harassment and obstruction. Sharon got hit with conspiracy and accessory to fraud. At the next neighborhood meeting, I stood in front of over 70 homeowners and presented the final tally. We had reached 78% approval to dissolve the HOA. We filed the petition with the county that Friday. It took 2 weeks for the paperwork to process, and then it was official. Pinebrook Shores HOA was disbanded. The county assigned a neutral property manager to handle shared infrastructure, roads, streetlights, drainage paid through a small annual municipal fee instead of arbitrary fines. The day after the dissolution, I walked down to the lake with a cup of black coffee. The morning was clear, the water calm. For the first time in months, there wasn't a single sign taped to my door, no sticker on my garage, no clipboard-wielding zealot measuring my grass height. Just birdsong and the smell of wet pine. A few minutes later, Don joined me at the dock. He looked around, then down at the water. "Feels different," he said. "Quieter," I agreed. He pulled a folded flyer from his pocket, the last anonymous one that had been circulated. Then he lit it with a lighter and dropped the burning corner into a steel coffee can between us. "Good riddance," he muttered. I nodded. No one came to stop us. No one called code enforcement. There weren't any mystery fines in the mail. The neighborhood had finally remembered what it was supposed to be. A place to live, not a kingdom to rule. As the paper turned to ash, I looked out over the lake, my lake, and finally exhaled. The Pinebrook Shores HOA was gone, but the fallout wasn't over. With Olivia, Todd, and Sharon all facing charges, the county prosecutor had begun stitching together a broader case of financial misconduct that stretched back farther than anyone expected. What we had initially thought was a handful of forged fines and a few fake invoices turned out to be the tip of something deeper and far worse. I learned about it when Assistant District Attorney Claire Ramirez knocked on my door one windy afternoon carrying a folder thick with documents. She introduced herself and got straight to the point. "We've been auditing HOA bank statements for the past 3 years. Olivia and the others didn't just target you. They siphoned over $75,000 from the HOA's reserve fund under false pretenses." I motioned for her to come in. We sat at the kitchen table while she laid everything out. "There were payments labeled infrastructure repairs and legal consulting," Claire said, flipping through pages. "But none of those contractors exist. The checks were made out to LLCs they registered privately. Sharon's company received over $22,000 for storm debris cleanup last year. The storm never happened." I leaned back, absorbing it. "So they were laundering HOA dues." "Exactly, and it gets worse. We found a loan application submitted in the HOA's name for an improvement project that was never approved by the community. They used forged signatures, yours included. That stopped me cold. Are you saying they took out a loan in my name?" "Not quite. But they forged your signature along with 20 others to make it look like the board had community consent. They used that to secure funding for a fake shoreline restoration project. The funds were wired to another one of Olivia's shell companies within 48 hours. I shook my head. "That's identity fraud on top of wire fraud and forgery," Claire nodded. "And now it's a federal case. We've looped in the U.S. Attorney's Office. A grand jury will be hearing the full case next month." That explained why the FBI showed up 2 days later. 3 agents in plain clothes spent 4 hours at Olivia's home collecting hard drives, printed records, and electronic devices. Her car was impounded. Her husband left town shortly after, reportedly moving in with relatives in Oregon. Todd and Sharon both posted bail, but neither had the nerve to show their faces in the neighborhood again. The FBI didn't just stop with them either. They served subpoenas to 2 former board members who had stepped down the year before. Both were under scrutiny for receiving consulting fees through the same web of fake companies. One of them, a real estate agent named Brian Tallman, had allegedly used HOA funds to boost property values on homes he was flipping, then funneled the proceeds back into Olivia's LLC. The FBI called it a coordinated scheme to defraud homeowners under the guise of community improvement. I was asked to testify again, this time in federal court. My role was simple: confirm the forged documents, recount the harassment, and provide evidence of the extortion attempts. I brought everything: the call logs, the videos, even the audio recording of Olivia threatening to drag me through compliance hell if I didn't pay the lake fee. The trial lasted 8 days. During cross-examination, Olivia tried to claim the forged signatures were clerical errors. When asked about the fake invoices, she said she relied on verbal board approvals, but the jury didn't buy it. Not after the prosecution showed the group chat where she coached other board members on how to build a fake paper trail. Todd confessed under pressure, testifying that he'd helped create the fake companies in exchange for a cut of the funds. Sharon's defense collapsed when bank records showed she'd used HOA money to pay off her car loan and renovate her kitchen. The verdict came in on the 9th day. All three were convicted on multiple counts, including wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, falsifying financial documents, and identity theft. Olivia was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. Todd got 5. Sharon received a 6-year sentence due to her active role in forging signatures. Restitution was ordered. The court froze their assets and began the process of returning funds to homeowners. Every household received a check for just under $1,700 drawn from seized accounts, but money wasn't the real victory. The neighborhood had transformed. Without the HOA's thumb on everyone's back, people started talking. Yard sales popped up on weekends. Kids rode bikes without being chased off for tapping chalk on the sidewalk. Neighbors who had never spoken before were now planning a community garden on the old HOA lot. And the lake, it became a symbol of what we'd reclaimed. One Saturday, I hosted a barbecue by the water. Not a fundraiser, not a compliance-approved event, just burgers, music, and a few dozen lawn chairs set up under the trees. People brought homemade dishes, fishing poles, and coolers. Someone even brought a rowboat. As the sun set, I stood at the edge of the dock with Claire Ramirez, who had stopped by with her husband and 2 kids. "You ever think it would get this far?" I asked her. She laughed. "Honestly, I thought it'd be a fine and a slap on the wrist." But I'm glad we dug deeper. These kinds of schemes usually go unnoticed for years. I still can't believe they thought they could take the lake. Well, they underestimated the one person who actually read their deed. She raised her soda can in a mock toast. I raised mine too. We looked out at the water, the surface golden with the last light of day, and for the first time in months I didn't feel like I had to keep watching my back. Olivia, Todd, and Sharon were behind bars. The fake companies were shut down. Every fraudulent check traced, every signature accounted for. The HOA was gone, dissolved by the very people it tried to exploit, and Pinebrook Shores, it wasn't perfect. But it was finally a neighborhood again, not a battleground, not a kingdom, just home.